The Observer's Folly. Supreme Observer Kylax watched Earth through the quantum imaging array of the celestial seeker, his primary sensory fronds twitching with satisfaction. After 50 years of careful observation, the time had finally come to evaluate humanity for potential inclusion in the Galactic Conclave. Their primitive radio signals and chemical rockets painted a clear picture of a species just beginning to grasp the fundamentals of space travel. "Status report," he commanded, his crystalline voice resonating through the bridge. "All scanning arrays functioning at optimal efficiency." "Supreme Observer," replied Second Observer Mira, her bioluminescent patterns pulsing with professional pride. "We're detecting exactly what we expected. Rudimentary satellite networks, basic fusion experiments, and early attempts at solar energy collection." Kylax's satisfaction deepened. Everything was proceeding according to the Great Protocol, the ancient document that had guided first contact procedures for over 10,000 years. Humanity's development matched every prediction, every model. They were following the exact technological progression that the Conclave had observed in countless other species. Perfect. Too perfect. The thought struck Kylax like a quantum discharge. In 50 years of observation, they had never detected a single anomaly, never observed a single unexpected advancement. Every human breakthrough had occurred exactly when the models predicted, not a day sooner or later. "Mira," he said slowly, his fronds now rigid with sudden tension, "initiate a deep spectrum analysis of their global communications network. Full quantum bandwidth." "Supreme Observer," that would violate. Now, the holographic displays surrounding them shimmered as new data streamed in. At first, everything appeared normal. The expected mess of radio waves, microwave transmissions, and primitive digital signals that crisscrossed Earth's surface. But then, buried beneath it all, something else emerged. Quantum signatures, impossibly subtle, masterfully hidden beneath the noise of conventional communications. Not the work of a primitive civilization, but a masterpiece of technological deception. "They knew," Kylax whispered, his crystalline voice cracking. "All this time, they knew we were watching." The space around the celestial seeker suddenly rippled like disturbed water. Where there had been empty void, a massive vessel materialized. It seemed to drink in light itself, its hull covered in geometric patterns that defied Euclidean geometry. The ship was easily 5 times the size of the celestial seeker, yet their most advanced sensors hadn't detected its approach. "Impossible," Mira breathed, her bioluminescence dimming with shock. "Our scanners show no engine signatures, no power readings, nothing." "Because they don't want us to see them," Kylax replied, professional composure warring with awe. "How many more are out there, hidden from our supposedly advanced sensors?" The answer came in the form of a transmission, broadcast simultaneously across every frequency their ships could receive. A human figure appeared on their screens, female, wearing what appeared to be a formal military uniform devoid of excessive ornamentation. "Greetings, representatives of the Galactic Conclave," she said, her voice carrying both warmth and steel. "I am Fleet Admiral Helena Reyes of the Earth Defense Force. Welcome to Sol Space. We've been expecting you." Kylax felt his fronds vibrate with a mixture of embarrassment and anticipation. This was not the primitive civilization they had come to evaluate. This was something else entirely. "Your stealth technology," he began, trying to maintain diplomatic protocol despite his shock. "It's remarkable." Admiral Reyes smiled, but there was something ancient in her expression, something that spoke of centuries of hidden knowledge. That's just our civilian-grade cloaking. Would you like to see what our military vessels can do?" As if on cue, space itself seemed to fold. Ships appeared everywhere, each massive vessel emerging from what should have been empty void. The Conclave's observation fleet of 20 ships suddenly found itself surrounded by hundreds of human vessels, each displaying technology that defied their understanding. "How?" Mira demanded, her professional demeanor cracking. "Our civilization has had faster-than-light travel for 12,000 years. We've mapped every possible technological progression. This shouldn't exist. Perhaps, Rise replied, her expression growing serious. That's precisely why you never discovered these technologies. You mapped every possible advancement, but did you ever try the impossible? Kylax found himself laughing, a sound that startled his bridge crew. In 50 years of observation missions, he'd never encountered anything like this. The humans hadn't just surpassed their expectations. They'd been playing an entirely different game. You've been broadcasting those primitive signals deliberately, he stated, maintaining a facade of technological infancy. Why? Reyes's expression shifted, humor replaced by something darker. Because what's out there in the dark is watching, Supreme Observer, just as you were. But unlike you, they're not interested in evaluation or uplift. They're interested in extinction. We learned that lesson the hard way. A chill ran through Kylax's crystalline core. What do you mean? Who are they? We'd be happy to explain, Rise offered. Would your delegation care to come aboard the Hyperion? She gestured to the massive vessel that had first revealed itself. We have quite a story to tell, and some warnings to share. After all, we've been protecting your worlds too, though you didn't know it. As Kylax prepared to accept the invitation, he realized that this wasn't just an observation mission anymore. This was a moment that would reshape galactic civilization itself. Humanity hadn't needed their uplift program. They'd surpassed it centuries ago. And somewhere in the dark between the stars, something waited that had taught humanity the need for such power, something that had forced them to reach beyond the possible and grasp the impossible. We would be honored, Kylax replied, understanding that he and his crew were about to learn why humans had hidden their true nature for so long and why they had chosen this moment to reveal themselves. The game of pretense was over. Now the real first contact could begin. Beneath the veil, the interior of the Hyperion defied everything Supreme Observer Kylax thought he knew about starship design. Where concave vessels favored organic curves and bioluminescent pathways, every corridor of the human ship displayed a controlled chaos of exposed systems and geometric precision. Multiple redundant systems were visible everywhere, yet they formed an intricate dance of engineering that seemed both beautiful and deadly. Your vessel, Mira observed, her bioluminescence shifting through shades of confusion. It appears overbuilt. Admiral Rise led them through another massive doorway that I rised open with liquid smoothness. Everything on this ship exists for a reason, Second Observer. Sometimes several reasons. She paused, turning to face the delegation. Tell me, in your 12,000 years of space travel, how many ships have you lost? Kylax's fronds rippled with pride. The Conclave's engineering is perfect. We haven't lost a major vessel in over 5,000 years. Perfect, Rise echoed, her expression unreadable. Follow me. They entered a vast chamber that stretched beyond visual range, its walls lined with what appeared to be memorial plates. But these weren't simple commemorations. Each plate displayed detailed technical schematics alongside crew, manifests, and incident reports. Welcome to the archive, Rise announced. Every failed experiment, every lost ship, every hard lesson humanity learned on its path to the stars. We call it our Wall of Teachers. Kylax approached one of the plates, his primary sensory fronds extending to absorb its contents. The Jakarta Initiative. Total loss due to quantum tunnel collapse. 3,000 crew. He turned to Reyes. This is why you have multiple redundant systems. Quadruple redundancy is our minimum standard now, Reyes confirmed. But look at the date. This was over 400 years ago, Mira interjected, her bioluminescence paling with shock. You've been in deep space for that long. Longer, Reyes gestured to an older section of the wall. We achieved our first faster-than-light travel almost 700 years ago. That's when we learned space wasn't empty, and it wasn't friendly. The Admiral led them deeper into the archive. Each section told stories of human ingenuity born from disaster, innovative solutions emerging from tragedy. But it was the dates that truly stunned the alien delegation. Humanity hadn't just achieved technological parity with the Galactic Conclave, they'd done it centuries ago. "Here's where we learned about the quantum dancers," Ray said, stopping at a particularly large display. The schematic showed a massive ship torn apart by forces Kylax didn't recognize, energy beings that feed on shield harmonics. "Lost 5 colony ships before we figured out how to detect them, 8 before we learned to fight them. But our surveys never detected any such creatures," Kylax protested. "Because they don't bother with your ships anymore." Reyes's smile held no humor. "We developed randomized shield frequencies specifically to counter them. Then we seeded the technology in damaged probes for your scientists to discover." Mira's bioluminescence went completely dark. "How many of our technologies?" "About 40% of the Conclave's recent innovations originated from our defensive research," Reyes confirmed. "We've been protecting the galaxy for centuries, guiding technological development to prepare for what's coming." "What's coming?" Kylax demanded, his crystalline voice vibrating with tension. Reyes walked to a sealed door at the far end of the archive. It opened to reveal a holographic display of the galaxy. Red markers pulsed at its edges, slowly advancing inward. "We call them the Void Harvesters," she said softly. "They emerge from intergalactic space every 1,000 years to feed on civilizations that have reached a certain technological threshold. The Galactic Conclave is approaching that threshold." "Impossible," Mira whispered. "We would have found evidence." "You did." Reyes's voice was gentle now, almost sympathetic. "Every ancient civilization you've discovered, every mysterious extinction event in your archaeological records, those were their feeding grounds, and they're coming back." The hologram zoomed in on one of the red markers. The image it revealed defied description. A massive, twisted space of impossible geometries that hurt to look at directly. "This is why we built ships like Hyperion," Reyes continued. "Why we filled them with backup systems and redundancies. Why we learned to hide in plain sight and develop technologies your scientists thought impossible. We've been preparing for their return." "And now?" Kylax asked, though he suspected he knew the answer. "Now we need allies." Reyes turned to face them fully. "The Void Harvesters are stronger than last time. We've detected new patterns in their approach vectors, adaptations in their feeding strategies. Humanity alone might not be enough to stop them." "But the Conclave," Mira began, "is predictable," Reyes finished. "Your civilization has followed the same technological path for 12,000 years. You've perfected what you know, but you've stopped looking for what you don't know. The Harvesters exploit that predictability." "And humans?" Kylax asked. "We're chaos incarnate," Reyes smiled, but this time there was warmth in it. "We try the impossible. We fail spectacularly. We learn from those failures and try again. We've developed technologies that shouldn't work, because no one told us they couldn't work. That's what the Harvesters can't predict." She gestured at the archive around them. "Every disaster on these walls taught us something. Every loss made us stronger. We need the Conclave's stability, your perfect engineering, your unified purpose. But you need our chaos, our willingness to fail and learn, our ability to think beyond the possible." Kylax's fronds swayed thoughtfully. "You're proposing an alliance." "I'm proposing survival," Reyes corrected. "The Harvesters will reach the outer rim of Conclave space in less than 5 years. We can help you prepare, share our technologies, teach you to fight in ways they won't expect. But you have to be willing to change, to embrace new possibilities." The Supreme Observer looked at the wall of teachers, at the countless lessons written in human lives and human courage. Then he looked at the hologram of the approaching Harvesters, at the doom that had haunted humanity's steps for centuries. "How do we begin?" he asked. Admiral Reyes's smile was fierce now. "We start with the impossible. The quantum dance. Combat simulation initiating," announced the Hyperion's AI, its voice resonating through the massive holographic chamber. Supreme Observer Kylax and Second Observer Mira stood beside Admiral Rise as the space around them transformed into a perfect recreation of a star system. What you're about to witness, Rise explained, is a recording of humanity's first encounter with a Harvester scout vessel. We've enhanced the visual representation to make it comprehensible to organic minds, but the tactical data is unchanged. The scene crystallized around them. A human colony ship, massive but defenseless, drifted through the outer reaches of a binary star system. Behind it, hidden in the gravitational shadow of a gas giant, lurked something that defied description, a construct of twisted space and impossible angles that seemed to leak darkness into the void. This happened 300 years ago, Rice continued. The colony ship Horizon Dawn, carrying 50,000 settlers to the Proxima system. We had no idea the Harvesters were watching. No idea they were waiting. The Harvester vessel emerged from hiding, its form seeming to bend reality around it. As it approached the colony ship, 3 human vessels suddenly appeared from what had appeared to be empty space. They were smaller than the Hyperion, sleeker, built for speed and maneuverability. The Swift Response Squadron. Rise identified them. Our first dedicated anti-harvester unit. What you're about to see changed everything we thought we knew about space combat. The Harvester struck first, launching what appeared to be tentacles of pure darkness toward the human ships. But instead of evading, the squadron split into a triangle formation and began to move in what seemed like a choreographed dance. Standard Harvester tactics involved dimensional shearing, Rise explained as the battle unfolded. They tried to tear ships apart by manipulating the fabric of space-time itself. The conventional response would be to strengthen shields to try to resist the attack directly. But that's not what your ships are doing, Mira observed, her bioluminescence pulsing with fascination. No, Rise smiled. We learned to dance instead. The human vessels moved in perfect synchronization, their paths describing complex geometric patterns through space. Each time the Harvester's attacks reached for them, they were already elsewhere, not through raw speed, but through precision of movement. We discovered that the Harvester's dimensional attacks follow predictable mathematical patterns, Rice continued. So we developed what we call quantum choreography, pre-calculated flight paths that exist in the spaces between their attack vectors. Kylax's fronds twitched with sudden understanding. You're not dodging their attacks. You're moving through spaces that their attacks cannot exist in. Exactly. The Harvesters operate on principles of mathematical certainty. They calculate where a ship should be, where it could be, and attack all possible positions simultaneously. But we learn to find the impossible positions, the spaces their mathematics say cannot exist. On the holographic display, the dance continued. The human ships wove patterns of increasing complexity, drawing ever closer to the Harvester vessel. Each movement seemed to confuse the alien entity more, its attacks becoming increasingly erratic. Watch what happens next, Rice said softly. The 3 human ships suddenly broke their pattern, each firing what appeared to be simply structured energy weapons. But where their beams crossed, reality itself seemed to hiccup. Quantum resonance cannons, Rise explained as the Harvester vessel began to twist in on itself. Individually, each beam is harmless, but when synchronized properly, they create a feedback loop in the quantum fabric of space-time. Against most enemies, they'd be useless, but against beings that exist partially in higher dimensions. The Harvester vessel imploded, collapsing into a point of infinite darkness before dissipating entirely. The human ships immediately moved to escort the colony vessel to safety. That was our first victory, Rice said as the hologram faded. We lost 2 ships and 28 crew members, but we learned how to fight them. More importantly, we learned how they think. Through mathematics, Kylax mused. Through certainty, Rice corrected. The Harvesters believe in absolute mathematical truth. Their technology, their tactics, their entire existence is based on what they know to be possible. Humanity's greatest strength is that we don't accept those limitations. You turn their strength against them, Mira realized, her patterns shifting with excitement. They cannot comprehend strategies that their mathematics say should not work, which is why we need the conclave. Rice concluded. Your civilization's understanding of conventional spacetime physics is unmatched. Combined with our quantum choreography and impossible mathematics, we could develop entirely new forms of defense, Kylax finished. But you said earlier that the harvesters are adapting, learning new strategies. Rice nodded grimly. They're evolving beyond pure mathematical certainty, learning to anticipate the impossible. That's why we revealed ourselves now. We need to combine your precision with our chaos before it's too late. She gestured, and a new hologram appeared, a tactical display of known harvester movements across the intergalactic void. We have 5 years before they reach conclave space, she continued. 5 years to teach you to dance in the quantum void, to help you understand why perfect engineering isn't enough. 5 years to prepare for a war unlike anything either of our civilizations has faced before. Kylax studied the tactical display, his fronds moving in complex patterns as he processed everything they'd learned. The Conclave Council will need to be convinced. They've based every decision on mathematical certainty for 12,000 years. Asking them to embrace impossible strategies. Then we'll show them what we showed you, Rice replied. Sometimes, seeing is believing. Humanity spent centuries learning to dance between the possible and impossible. Now we just have to teach the rest of the galaxy to join us. Ancient warnings. The Hyperion's archaeological vault was unlike anything Kylax had ever seen. Where the Conclave preserved their artifacts in sterile stasis fields, humans had created what looked more like a living museum. Holographic reconstructions flickered between physical displays, bringing ancient scenes to life around the preserved remnants of dead civilizations. Every artifact in this room, Admiral Rice said softly, tells the same story. We just had to learn how to read it properly. She led them to a central display where fragments of what appeared to be a massive stone computer core hung suspended in a gravity field. Symbols crawled across its fractured surface, glowing with residual power even after countless millennia. The Nexus Archive. Rice identified it. We found it buried in the ruins of what we now call the precursor civilization, about 300 light-years from Earth. It took us 50 years just to decode their basic language structure. I recognized these symbols. Mira interjected, her bioluminescence pulsing with excitement. We found similar artifacts in 17 different star systems, but we've never been able to power them, let alone decode them. Because you were looking for sense in the sensible places, Rice smiled. The precursors didn't write their warnings in any normal language. They encoded them into the quantum states of artificial crystals. Each fragment contains billions of overlapping messages, accessible only if you know how to read the impossible spaces between electronic states. Warnings. Kylax's fronds twitched with sudden apprehension. About the harvesters. And so much more. Rice gestured, and the holographic environment shifted. They were suddenly surrounded by images of ancient worlds, magnificent cities that spiraled up into space, planet-spanning computer networks, stars wrapped in artificial shells to harvest their energy. The precursors weren't just one civilization, Rice continued. They were the last survivors of dozens of species, all brought together by the same threat. The harvesters had already consumed thousands of worlds by then. The precursors were the ones who first understood the pattern. The hologram shifted again, showing mathematical formulae that seemed to twist in on themselves, defying the normal laws of geometry and physics. The harvesters don't just destroy civilizations, Rice explained. They consume complexity itself. The more advanced a species becomes, the more they rely on consistent physical laws and mathematical certainty. The harvesters use that certainty as a weapon, turning ordered spacetime against itself. But that's impossible, Mira protested. You can't weaponize physical laws themselves. That's exactly what we thought. A new voice joined them. A human male stepped out of the shadows. Older than Rice, his dark skin lined with age, his eyes bright with intelligence. I'm Dr. Marcus Chen, head of xenorchaeology for the Earth Defense Force. And I'm the one who first realized what we were really looking at in these ruins. Dr. Chen has spent the last 60 years studying the precursor archives, Rise explained. He's the one who helped us understand why our impossible technologies work against the harvesters. Chen approached the stone computer core, his fingers tracing the glowing symbols with practiced familiarity. The precursors discovered something fundamental about the universe that we're only beginning to understand. Reality itself isn't as solid as we think it is. The laws of physics that we take for granted are more like suggestions, habits that the universe has fallen into. But our understanding of physics has been refined over 12,000 years, Kylax objected. The mathematical models are perfect. Perfect for the universe as it exists now, Chen agreed. But the harvesters, they remember when things were different. They come from a time before the current physical laws settled into place, and they've learned to temporarily revert space back to that more flexible state. The holograms changed again, showing the destruction of ancient worlds. But now Kylax could see it with new understanding. The harvesters weren't just destroying technology. They were unraveling the very laws that made that technology possible. The precursors found a way to fight back, Rice continued. They discovered that consciousness itself, particularly chaotic, unpredictable consciousness, could temporarily stabilize space-time against the harvesters' influence. They built massive engines that amplified this effect, protecting entire sectors of space. What happened to them? Mira asked, though her dimmed bioluminescence suggested she already knew the answer. They failed, Chen said simply. Or rather, they partially succeeded, but at a terrible cost. They drove the harvesters back, but the strain of maintaining their reality-stabilizing engines proved too much. Their civilization burned out like a supernova, using the last of their energy to encode these warnings for whoever came after. But humanity found a different way, Rise added. Instead of trying to force stability on an unstable universe, we learned to work with the instability. Our quantum choreography, our impossible mathematics. They work because we're not trying to enforce rules on reality. We're dancing between the rules that exist and the rules that might have been. The Conclave's greatest strength is also its greatest vulnerability, Chen explained. You've spent 12,000 years perfecting your understanding of how the universe works now, but the harvesters can change those rules. All your perfect engineering, all your mathematical certainty, becomes a weapon they can use against you. Unless we adapt, Kylax said slowly, his crystalline voice resonating with new understanding. Unless we learn to think like humans. Not exactly like us, Rice smiled. What we need is a synthesis. Your stability and precision, combined with our chaos and creativity. The precursors tried to fight the harvesters with pure order. We've managed to fight them with controlled chaos. But together we might find a balance. Mira finished, her patterns shifting with excitement. A way to maintain technological civilization without becoming vulnerable to their attacks. Exactly, Chen nodded. But first, you need to understand just what we're really facing. The harvesters you've seen in our records, the ones we fought before, they were just scouts. The main fleet is something else entirely. He gestured one final time, and the holographic environment changed to show something that made Kylax's crystalline core vibrate with instinctive terror. A vast darkness between the galaxies, moving with terrible purpose toward the Milky Way. That, Rice said quietly, is what we've been preparing for. That's why we've spent centuries hiding our true capabilities, guiding the Conclave's development, trying to prepare the galaxy for what's coming. And now we're out of time. The real war is about to begin. Unity's dawn. The Grand Assembly Chamber of the Hyperion hummed with tension as representatives from Earth's combined fleet faced their counterparts from the Galactic Conclave. Supreme Observer Kylax stood beside Admiral Reyes, watching as hundreds of holographic delegates materialized around them, some human, others representing the diverse species of the Conclave. Distinguished representatives, Reyes began, her voice carrying to every corner of the vast chamber. What you're about to see will challenge everything you believe about the nature of our universe. But survival depends on understanding what we face. The chamber darkened, and the space between the delegates filled with a recreation of the Harvester fleet, drawn from humanity's long-range quantum observations. The assembled aliens fell silent as they witnessed the true scale of the threat for the first time. 5 years, Rice continued. That's how long we have before their main fleet reaches the outer rim of conclave space. But we don't have to face them as separate civilizations. Today, we offer an alliance, not just of military forces, but of ideas. Dr. Chen stepped forward, triggering a new set of holograms. For centuries, humanity has been developing technologies that the Harvesters cannot predict. Now, we're prepared to share everything we know. But more importantly, we want to learn from you. The Conclave's mastery of conventional physics, combined with our understanding of quantum impossibilities, could give us the edge we need. A Conclave elder, their crystalline form glowing with ancient wisdom, spoke up. You speak of combining order and chaos, of finding balance between certainty and impossibility. But how can we trust what we cannot understand? By understanding why you need to, another voice answered. Mira stepped forward, her bioluminescence pulsing with conviction. I've seen their archives, studied their battles. Everything the humans have shown us is true. The Harvesters aren't just coming to destroy our technology. They're coming to unravel the very laws of physics we depend on. The chamber erupted in discussion, countless voices raising questions and concerns. Rise let it continue for a moment before raising her hand for silence. We don't ask for blind trust, she said. We offer proof. Right now, human ships are moving into position throughout conclave space, preparing to demonstrate our quantum choreography techniques. We'll show you how to dance between the possible and impossible, how to fight enemies that can change the rules of reality itself. She gestured, and new holograms appeared. Training scenarios, technical specifications, tactical analyses. Every ship in Earth's fleet carries teachers, ready to work with your crews. Every human colony has opened its archives to your scientists. We've spent centuries preparing for this moment, and now we need you as much as you need us. Kylax moved to stand beside her, his crystalline voice resonating with authority. As Supreme Observer, I have witnessed their capabilities firsthand. The Conclave has always prided itself on perfect understanding, on mastery of the known. But we face an enemy that turns our greatest strength into a weakness. We must learn to embrace new possibilities. The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. 12,000 years of conclave tradition, of careful advancement along known paths, challenged by the need to adapt or die. Finally, the conclave elder spoke again. How do we begin? Reyes smiled, but her eyes remained serious. We start with your youngest crews, the ones most open to new ideas. We pair them with our quantum choreographers, teach them to see the spaces between conventional physics. Meanwhile, your scientists work with ours to understand the deeper principles behind our technologies. And what of the Harvesters? Another delegate asked. Even with our forces combined, they outnumber us significantly. Numbers aren't everything, Dr. Chen replied. The Harvesters rely on predictability, both in physics and in strategy. Every time we defeated them, it's been by doing the unexpected. Now imagine that unpredictability amplified by the precision and coordination of the Conclave fleet. The holograms shifted again, showing simulated battles where human and Conclave ships moved in perfect synchronization, conventional weapons combining with quantum effects in ways that defied traditional physics. This is just the beginning, Rice continued. Together, we can develop entirely new technologies, new strategies that even the Harvesters cannot anticipate. But we have to start now. 5 years isn't long to reshape our understanding of the universe. One by one, the delegates began to signal their agreement. The Conclave Elders' crystalline form pulsed with ancient light as they made the formal announcement. The Galactic Conclave accepts the alliance with humanity. Let it be recorded that on this day, We chose to embrace the impossible in defense of all that is possible. As the chamber erupted in approval, Reyes turned to Kylax and Mira. This is just the first step. The real work begins now. Teaching chaos to beings of order. Mira mused, her patterns shifting with amusement. It won't be easy. Nothing worthwhile ever is, Kylax replied. But perhaps that's the most important lesson humanity has to teach us. The universe isn't divided into possible and impossible. It's all about what we're willing to try. Above them, the holographic representation of the Harvester fleet continued its inexorable advance. But now, for the first time in countless millennia, it moved toward a galaxy united in purpose, where the precision of the conclave would merge with the creative chaos of humanity. The laws of physics themselves might be negotiable, but the determination to survive, to protect all they had built, was absolute. The real war was coming, but they would face it together, dancing between the possible and impossible, finding new paths through the quantum void. And perhaps in that dance between order and chaos, they would discover not just survival, but a whole new understanding of what their civilizations could become.